you have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to really care about what you're doing.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
This week, my island influencer is a true pioneer in nutrition and menopause, Joanne Posey. Jo hails from the Isle of Man, and she's an expert in her field, dedicated to helping individuals and groups navigate the challenges of menopause and find relief from their symptoms. But Jo's influence doesn't stop there. She also works with organisations, empowering them to support their staff during this transformative phase of life, equipping line managers with the tools they need to provide understanding and assistance. Coming from a lineage of entrepreneurs, Jo has always been ahead of her time. Her passion for researching, investigating, and understanding well-being, wellness, diet, and lifestyle has positioned her at the front of her industry. And now the rest of the world is catching up to her invaluable insights. In this episode, you'll get the chance to listen and learn from my conversation with Jo. Her deep understanding of the menopause journey and compassionate approach make her a trusted source of support and guidance. Jo just gets what is going on, and you won't want to miss the wisdom she shares. So get ready to be inspired by episode 92 of Island Influencers with the incredible Joanne Posey. Well, hello, Jo Posey. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on Island Influencers today.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted.
No, it's my pleasure. I mean, I heard you speak recently at an event. You were the star turn at a woman's breakfast, because it was all on the subject of menopause, wasn't it? And You're the subject matter expert. Brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed it and thought, well, got to do a podcast. So
it was a great event, wasn't it?
It was excellent. Yeah,
lovely atmosphere.
Yeah, it was an vibe. Give them a plug. And Brooks McDonald put it on, of course. So it was, it was a very nice event. So Jo, tell our listeners, if you don't mind, all about you and all about your business and how you've come from on your journey to where you are today. I mean, we first met ages ago, didn't we?
We did.
In a totally different life.
In a totally different life. Yeah. I think back then you were, I don't know, I'm going to assume you were like in your first home office. It was almost like an office over a garage or something. It was.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You had one member of staff and it was, long time ago now. But it's for gosh, seems like another lifetime. Kind
of was.
Yeah, we've both been on quite the journey since then, haven't we?
Yeah. So tell me about yours.
Well, I am from the Isle of Man originally. Mm-hmm. So I was born over here 100 years ago, literally sometime in the last century.
That's not 100 years ago.
It feels like it. Good gracious, it feels like it. Yes, so I was a child of the 1970s, so originally lived down south, and then when I was still very small, the family business took us into the Big Smoke, Douglas, where I had most of my school career.
What was the family business?
It was a bunch of shops.
Right.
So all the children of the 80s will potentially remember Wendy K dress shop, followed by UZ, which was also ladies' clothes and clothes for children. And the family, my mum's maiden name is Shorrock, so that was Shorrock Shoes.
Yeah, wow, okay.
And then Shock's Record Shop, which is down in almost Isle of Man folklore, comes up on these Isle of Man nostalgia pages all the time, and people remember almost it was a rite of passage going into Shock's Record Shop, and
sure was,
and and buying whatever the latest release was. So those were the family businesses, and my grandfather started the businesses way back in the day. So it was when he had a shop in Port Erin and a shop in Peel and dotted all over, and
right.
And
Isle of
then,
Man serial entrepreneurs. It's in the blood, Joe, in the blood.
well, that's a funny thing because it's not a path I ever thought I would follow myself, but here we are.
Yeah.
But having a family business, and anyone that has that kind of background will know this, that you become child slave labor. So I would finish school and go down to one of the shops every evening, and there'd be some job for me to do.
Nice.
And then Saturday working, and of course through holidays, and that was very much part of our upbringing, and that was just kind of expected that you'd make yourself useful.
Give you a good work ethic.
Yes, it did. I don't know if I was always particularly happy about it. And when I think back now to, gosh, obviously it's a very long time ago, and inflation being what it is, but I was probably earning something like 50 pence a day.
Rich.
Yes, indeed. But you did it because, well, one, you didn't really have much choice, but two, you wanted the money and you wanted to see those pennies kind of start to accumulate, so you could buy whatever it was that you wanted to buy.
Yes.
Without having to ask for someone else to get it for you.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened when you went to school in Douglas, and did you go off to university?
Not straight away.
Yeah.
I was always kind of academic, but I left school at 16 originally because I already knew everything.
There you go.
So, and I was never going to use anything that required book learning anyway, and that just wasn't the path I was going to be on. And I originally joined the Isle of Man Bank, age 16.
Right.
And was there for 3 years and hated every minute of it. I think it's probably fair to say I wasn't particularly good at it.
Oh dear.
It was very much a different time. Everything was manual. There was even down to things like printing checkbooks, back when every account would have a metal plate and you'd put it in the machine. And that, of course, was the job of the junior. And
so I was making the coffee, going to do the girls' shopping and doing all the filing. Had a really good alphabet, yeah.
Yes, indeed. So all of that, and then that was in Oncombe branch, and then I got moved to Douglas branch on Athol Street, and as part of the gig there, I say this is just tells you what the time was then. At the end of the day, after the counter had closed, it was the job of one of the female younger members of staff to take the teas to the senior management.
Right.
And it was never the job of one of the junior male members of staff, because that would be demeaning. But we would. So
it's not that long ago. I mean, we joke about our age, but we're not that old, are we?
No, this would have been mid to late 80s.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And we weren't allowed to wear trousers.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
So we would take the senior management there, tea or coffee and biscuits or whatever it was every day. Anyway, so I had been there for, say, 3 years and just thought, this is not really, I don't know where I'm going with this effectively. And by this point, all my school friends had then taken themselves off to university, and my competitive side really kicked, and I thought, I could do that. I could be there. So I went back to school.
What, literally, you went back to school?
I had to, because I didn't have any A levels.
Right.
So at that point, it had been 3 years. I'd been 3 years out of school. So I went up to Isle of Man College.
Yeah.
Took my A levels up there, English, sociology and economics for 2 years. Then went off to Glasgow University.
To do what?
Originally I was going to read English, but the way it worked in the older Scottish universities at that point was it was 4 years, so you came out with a master's rather than a bachelor's, but you spent the first 2 years doing 3 subjects each year, and you lifted and shifted subjects from year 1 to year 2 if you were going to continue with them.
Yeah.
And by the time I'd done 2 years of English at degree level, I never wanted to read another book again.
Oh God.
So it completely destroyed any pleasure I had in literature.
Oh no.
So I ended up reading history. So 2 years later, I came out of there with my history degree, which has served me not at all.
Oh no.
Yes. So
Oh,
I
dear.
ended up back at that point. I ended up back on the Isle of Man because I had fallen in love, and I was 25 and got married.
Right.
So, and that was where my beloved was. So it was back to the Isle of Man, and at that
Lucky
point,
guy.
yes, indeed, he was very, very fortunate. And, at that point, and we are 95 by this time.
Yep.
By that point, there was no such thing as a graduate training scheme on the Isle of Man. So I effectively ended up back where I'd been, as far as career was concerned, and really starting again on the bottom rung, wondering, well, what was all that about? Was there any point? But of course, there's a point. Of course, there was a point. And I started temping for Coutts, which was then the office in Onken, which in fairly quick succession led to a full-time job with them. And I spent 3 to 4 years with them there. Mm-hmm. And I then took myself off to London because by that point, my first marriage had come to an end.
Oh no!
What can I say? I'm just convinced now that nobody under the age of 30 should be allowed to get married.
Sounds sensible.
Yes, indeed.
But you don't even know who you are before you're 30, do you? Really?
You really don't. Really don't. And and my first husband was an absolutely, was a great guy, but we just weren't suited.
Wow.
And I think is my kind of reading of that. We just weren't suited. So I took myself off to London, which is something that had always sort of been an intention. And I still thoroughly believe that if you can, everybody that comes from a small community should experience life in a bigger community, take themselves into
something where you're anonymous, really.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. But I think there's an awful lot that you learn about the world and about yourself when you lift and shift yourself in that way. So I worked for Coutts on the Strand, in their international team, which was quite the, well, gosh, that was just a brand new existence.
Did you do much traveling, or were you just
yes, it did. I became one of their what they call private bankers, effectively a relationship manager. I had a book of clients in the States.
Golly.
So I was on planes going to Florida and Georgia and Washington DC, and so it was quite the life, really. But it also involved, gosh, insane hours, working weekends. There were times when I would get myself up into the office for 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I would leave 8, 9 o'clock at night, go home, have something to eat, go to bed.
Do it all the next day.
And, sometimes having woken up in the middle of the night going, I forgot whatever it was, or dreaming about work.
No.
And you just,
it's amazing when you're young, you can do that, really.
Yes. Yeah, I can't even imagine it now. And yes, I was down there for about 4 years, and then my father passed away.
Oh dear.
While I was down there, very, very suddenly, and that was a little bit of a wake-up call for me in terms of where are the people that mean the most here.
Yeah. And
that was still very much here on the island. So I moved back, and I've been there ever since. So that's now 22, 23 years, something like that.
Yeah, golly.
Like that, yeah.
So what happened to you to change that sort of, did you move back with Coutts, I guess, back to the island? Were they still here at that point? You came back with
you came
back with Paribas, didn't you?
Yeah, no, I joined what was then Colin Stewart, now Concord.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which I think is where we met.
Yes.
I think through
Yeah, it
the
is.
wonderful Andy Finch.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Yeah, so I joined Colin Stewart, and again, that was I had a very, very blessed existence with them, I would say. So again, lots of international travel. I then moved to BNP Paribas, and was with them until they closed over here. And that for me was really the fork in the road, because they offered myself and my husband, my second husband, a relocation to Jersey. But that was really the moment of reckoning for me. I originally said yes because, well, what else was I going to do? But I think over time I just realized that I would be going to chase the salary and nothing more. I think I had taken that life as far as I could. I had had some health issues, and I had started my own personal journey in terms of researching, investigating well-being, wellness, diet, lifestyle, all the rest of it. And the more I pushed that door open, the bigger and bigger the subject got. And over time, as I say, the leaping off point became BNP Paribas saying, well, come with us. And it was actually, I don't think I will. And with the support of a very, very understanding husband, I spent 4 years retraining.
Yeah, gosh. And actually, yeah, pivotal moment, like you say, fork in the road.
Yeah.
But ahead of your time for what appears to be, everyone's doing it, aren't they?
It really does seem that way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And clearly, the training is, as you'd expect, it's very wide ranging. It's, we cover all different age ranges and conditions and all the rest of it.
Sure.
But it was only post graduation, and having spent a year or so working in as a generalist, lockdown came, which completely destroyed the business I built overnight, as you can imagine, because everything was in person.
Yeah, face to face. Yeah.
But that was a time to then step back, evaluate what's working, what isn't working quite so well. And it became very clear that you need to specialize in doing what I do. Otherwise, you're going to kill yourself constantly trying to keep on top of everything, because obviously the research is moving on all the time.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah.
And I started talking about menopause because I'm 53, so it was a subject that was very close to my life. I started talking about menopause online, and suddenly it was,
yeah.
Wow.
There's no support. No one would talk about it.
No. And the number of women that, oh, please tell me this. What do I do? I was, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, this is very, very clear. And I was telling a friend at the time who was visiting the island, oh, look, this is what I'm doing now. And I'm focusing on menopause. He said, oh, that's very zeitgeisty, isn't it? Is it? And then suddenly it was, I don't know, it was within the year, then Davina had happened, and suddenly it was the subject du jour. So yes, as you say, it's kind of gone from, well, everybody's doing it, and certainly everybody is doing menopause, but gosh, isn't it about time?
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know they're doing menopause, are they, Joe? But certainly the nutrition side, it's there's more nutritionists out there than there's ever been, which is a good thing, because I think it's the food space isn't regulated enough. But for you to, you spoke to us all that morning, and it was like, this is amazing. Somebody gets what's going on. And I'm sure everybody else in that room felt the same way, judging by the number of questions that you got. So,
which was lovely.
Yeah. It was a good.
Was incredible.
It was good. So, tell us more about the business. It's what it's called, for example.
Life Lessons Nutrition, which I think, lesson to anybody setting up their own business: choose a shorter title.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't know what you don't know.
Okay. So LNN. I can't say it. It'd be LLN.
Yes.
Okay. Life lessons.
Life lessons nutrition.
Yeah.
But in fairness, I don't think most people, it's kind of secondary. They know me. I've become the menopause lady.
And how does it work?
It works on the private client side of things. So I've got two online courses which I now run. They're still live courses. So the 3 weeks, which I'm about to start, which is Menomelt. We start again on Monday. So that's 3 weeks of women in menopause. Did you know that? And if you do this, you're going to feel so much better. So 3 weeks of that, and here's all the resources to help you through that. So here's all your food, and this is the type of stuff you should be eating, and this is how you should be moving and thinking about your stress and all.
And this is a course that you run regularly, is it?
Yes.
That one. Yeah. Okay. Because this episode will probably go out after. Well, it will go after the 8th of May. So
yeah. Oh, so
yeah.
Yes. So
So when's
will be passed by then, but I'll be running it again from the start of September.
There you go.
And building on that, I've created Meno Mastery, which is 3 months. And I've got lots of different experts that support me on that, including, so I bring in a GP who's always the star turn, and a hypnotherapist who helps with anxiety and breaking some of those less helpful habits, and somebody that looks on the movement, and somebody that supports people in their sleep, and a mindset coach. So it's really looking
so that's a lot of resources to pull together. And how do you attend any of these courses? Are they all online?
They're all online, yeah.
Live, recorded?
They're all online. There is a live element every week, but the rest is all in the membership area, that you sign up and here's all the resources. And
right. Okay.
And then working with me one-to-one. Again, everything I do now is online. I used to, as I said, run an in-person clinic, but lockdown put paid to that. And now people are very happy and comfortable working, engaging through Zoom. So I work with a lot of women one-to-one who are more typically coming to me because they're really at the end of their rope. They have tried everything else and they're just fed up of feeling lousy. So there's a lot of unraveling that goes on there, and building individual programs for people. Yeah. And then there's the corporate stuff, of course.
Right. Okay.
So, and that menopause in the workplace, of course, has now become a thing as well.
We can actually use the M word now, can't we?
Yes, indeed. Indeed. And that's definitely moving on apace. Certain organizations are really embracing it, taking it seriously, and I will see senior management at those sessions, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Really, really fantastic, because if you're not leading from the top, then there's far less chance of the rest of your team taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And, and there is an argument as well that these kind of sessions, I think, really do need to be pushed. There needs to be quite a little bit of a 3-line whip in terms of getting people there, because if you're getting a manager turning up, you could argue that they're already in the right headspace. It's possibly the managers that think they don't need it.
Yeah.
that actually are the ones that need to be compelled to be there.
So what does that look like, that sort of training?
That sort of training is on the manager side of things. It's much more, yes, there's an element of, okay, look, this is what's happening. This is what it's actually about, and this is what your staff might be experiencing. But much more on, this is why it matters to you as a business. So lots of looking at our demographics, the bottom line, the legal position.
Yeah.
And then going into, look, here's all the evidence around women's experience, why they've been leaving the workplace, what they're telling us. And a lot of that is about the information gap. Women have been leaving because they haven't even known that they're in menopause.
Yeah.
So awful anecdotes around women thinking it's early onset dementia.
Yes. You can have those days sometimes, can't you?
Yes, indeed.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah. And because there hasn't been that conversation, then why would you necessarily link that brain fog, that that loss of cognitive function too. It's all right. It's because you're 49 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it is just a phase. And that's the other thing, that sense, that fear of I have permanently lost my ability to perform at this level, or I've been over promoted is another phrase I've heard used. So it's talking about that, and then how you can support those women and what are the most effective interventions and accommodations to put in place.
And that's bespoke, is it, from company to company, or is it just as simple as going in and doing a presentation to everyone? I mean, what does that look like?
There's always an element, I think, of bespoke. One, it will depend, is there already a policy in place? What are they already doing? What perhaps do we know about the evidence in their particular industry? So, in fact, I've done a couple of dedicated workshops for both the insurance industry and our local law firms. And that has really dug into, okay, well, what's the Law Society doing? What are they saying? And what does evidence from research that Zurich did, for example, what's that telling us? What does the insurance industry as a whole look like?
Fascinating.
And how well are you actually taking your women up to those high levels, and then seeing what the holes are in that leaky bucket? Again, another phrase that, where are all those women going? Where are all those talented 20 and 30-year-olds that aren't then progressing up onto the board?
Oh, excellent, Jo. That sounds a very useful and essential tool for many businesses to consider. So let's hope that someone points them to this podcast and they can listen and learn. Well, if it's okay, if you don't mind me asking, in my day job as a financial planner, what for you was money like growing up? I mean, you've already described the work ethic. Did that impact into your own sort of financial awareness and how you think about money today? What's sort of a roundabout way of saying, how is your earliest memory, and how does that affect you today, do you think?
Definitely the earliest memory is around getting getting that 50 pence in my hand. And with working in a ladies' fashion shop, that was something I was very aware of. And then looking at that thing in the shop that, another 8 weeks, I will have you, lovely thing, whatever it is. And that slow process of saving up. I do remember as well, as a young child, and looking back, wouldn't have been more than 6 or 7. My mum and dad didn't have, there wasn't a lot of money in the pot at that point. And we were taken on holiday. We lived in Douglas, and we were taken on holiday to Ramsey. So we were way ahead of the whole staycation thing.
Yeah, weren't you just? My goodness.
But I remember distinctly feeling embarrassed and not telling my school friends that we were being taken on holiday to Ramsey. Possibly, kind of telling a fib about where we were going, because obviously we'd been taken out of school and all the rest of it.
South of France, mate.
I remember that kind of, that embarrassment around that lack of wherewithal. Now, where that came from, why I should have been embarrassed, I don't really know. It was probably around the time when other friends were maybe, they were going on one of the first package holidays to the Costas or whatever.
Yeah.
And we were packing the car and going to Ramsey. And just remembering that sense of lack.
Yeah, no, we didn't go at all. So there you go. Yeah. You were one up on me.
Yeah. But yes, it was always having to work for whatever you had. And then that certainly stood me in good stead when I started earning myself. I think one of the first things I did was, do you remember the Pearl Man used to come round and he would take your, whatever your premium was, of signing up to a 5-10 year policy, whatever it was.
Yeah, an endowment. So you have a lump sum at the end for the benefit of our listeners who don't remember or haven't used these sorts of things. They were a really good way of saving, weren't they? A disciplined process.
I mean, they were never great investments, I think.
No,
fair to say. But it forced you to save, didn't it?
It did.
So, and I think I remember my first policy paid out and was the deposit on the first property I bought by myself.
Oh,
Post first separation / divorce, I bought myself a 2-bedroom flat, and my deposit was whatever the Pearl man had given me at that time. And then I had another pot that, well, whatever that went to, because you'd started another one once your income had gone up.
They were good salespeople, weren't they?
Oh, they so were. Yes, they really were. But as I say, it was always very much, well, you needed to save for whatever you had, because, well, if you didn't, well, you weren't going to have anything.
No. Oh, good. No, thanks very much. That's a nice story. And throughout the things you've done throughout your life so far, what's given you the most fulfillment, would you say?
I think both periods of higher education were certainly developed me as a person. So both time at university and then studying for my nutrition qualifications, and the tenacity to stick at it in both cases, because my God, the going gets hard.
Yeah.
As you know, as you will know, I mean, gosh, similar with yourself, but to a certain level, I went through all the banking exams and the investment exams because, of course, you had to.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to get on, that was.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You absolutely had to. But I think, the tenacity and that sense of, well, I can't quit, and I wouldn't allow myself to quit. And I think learning that about myself and then coming out the other end with, and here's my piece of paper, I did it. Now, if someone had come along in either of those occasions in about year 2 or 3, because that's when it gets really hard and you can't see the end of the tunnel. If someone had come along and said, this has happened, Joe, you're going to have to stop. Oh, all right then. If somebody else had rescued me from that, what felt like purgatory at times, then I'd have probably, wiped my brow and thought, oh, well, got me out of that. But no, I was never going to quit off my own account. And so, massive sense of fulfillment in that. And then really on the personal side, I am incredibly, incredibly fortunate to have, I'm married incredibly well. My husband is a wonderful person.
Oh.
I genuinely, and I think meeting him, growing with him as a person, a huge amount of fulfillment in that, and a sense of just always being part of a team, somebody that's always got your back, somebody you can be your worst with, but that you want to actually be your best with.
Yeah.
Probably more than anything, the amount of fulfillment, the personal fulfillment from that. And that's the bedrock on which everything is built. That's the bedrock upon which Life Lessons was founded, and that I was able to have this second career.
Oh, that's fabulous. Thank you. Moving on then from now being an existing business owner, an entrepreneur, what would be your number one tip for anybody else who's aspiring to do this, or even an existing business owner?
It's hard to really narrow it down to one. It's really, really hard. But I think fundamentally, when I think about what I have done with nutrition versus in the finance industry, I think the most important thing is you have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to really care about what you're doing. And I, as I said, I had done all the exams and I had progressed to a certain level in finance, but I knew I had taken it as far as I could, because the next step was board level and running an office or whatever. And I didn't care enough. And I knew I didn't care enough to give that next part of myself to do that.
Right.
And I think if you are going to run your own business, if you are going to have that level of responsibility, you really have to care, and it has to be something that you really in your heart believe in.
Yeah.
And because that's the thing I think that will carry you through and make you do the things that you need to do.
No, I agree. Totally agree with you. Yeah. No, excellent. Thank you. So what do you do now to relax and to keep your life in balance?
Not very good at this.
Aren't you?
I have to hold my hands up. I'm kind of failing at the moment, but I have a dog, so there's lots of walking the dog. For anyone else that has a beagle, They will know that they're not the most relaxing dog to have, but she gets sworn at quite a lot, but we do love her. We do love her. But of course, that forces us out. And well, anyone that's read the research will know that having a pet takes down your stress hormones and will just naturally calm you down, etc. So there's that. For a number of years now, I have been doing yoga. I don't do it as much as I should or as much as I used to.
Well, who does? Apart from a yoga instructor, maybe.
Yes, indeed. But I used to go to like 4 classes a week. Now, if I manage one, I'll think I'm doing well. But that has given me the skills to enable me to calm myself down, to make myself go to sleep at night, to get myself back to sleep. So that is invaluable. Everybody should do yoga, regardless, gender, age, whatever. Everyone should do yoga.
Yes, wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
And reading, although most of that is now textbooks still and the latest journal and whatever. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's a question later. Okay, we'll find out about that. So tell me, what do you think is the best thing about living in the Isle of Man?
Yes, well, the easy answer, of course, is the countryside and those resources that we have on our doorstep. I think, though, the size of the island, in addition to that, is that we still, in large part, have a community that still feels like a community. People still talk to each other on the street, at the bus stop, or whatever, in the supermarket queue. And that's certainly actually something that being a dog walker gives you, because dog walkers talk to each other.
Yeah.
And those little interactions are just, they're just social glue, and helping you feel like you belong. So I think that, and the size of the island, going beyond the natural resources, what we have available to us in terms of sports and culture is quite astonishing, really.
It is.
All the different centres that we have, from Peel Centenary and Erin Arts, and the likes of Ballacameen Studio Theatre and the King's Theatre down at King William's, and streaming all these productions straight from the West End or wherever. And we've just had, of course, the Guild and Manx Music Festival, and we'll have Brignac, and of course there's TT, but all the different sports clubs, and it's just astonishing for 300 square miles and what are we now, 90,000 population, what we have available to us.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It really
brilliant. And what would you say the main challenges are that the Isle of Man faces? And what would you do to fix them?
Jeez, I think that we have somewhat backed ourselves into a corner in terms of the role that we have given ourselves in the world. It's a bit of a nil-sum game where, a part of your attractiveness in the international sphere is based upon, well, what are the tax rates?
Yeah.
Because there is always somebody that is going to undercut you. And I don't know, that's a very difficult space to get yourself out of, particularly where we have we have this, this massive pension funding gap and all the rest of it. And we are seeing a lot of our public resources and services greatly diminished and in trouble. We do need more.
Like every other developed country, though. It's
true.
It's true. Yeah, still paying off the credit crisis and now COVID. Yeah.
We do need more people over here for sure. We have a demographic problem, a huge demographic problem.
Yeah.
One of the stats I throw out in the presentation is that we're on the top 6 oldest populations in the world, and we are not replacing that bulge that we have in the 45 and upwards age range. So we desperately need more people to come over and be taxpayers, to actually contribute, to be economically active, to bring their children so that we have that next generation coming along. But then that takes us back to the question of, well, where are we going to house them? Where are we going to put them in school? Which doctors are we going to put them in? And again, then that takes us back to, it's all a bit chicken and egg, isn't it? We need them. I think we need to make the investment in them to get them to come. But it's a big ask at the moment, where we can't even house our own younger generations, or the idea of a 20-something being able to afford their own premises, even to rent, is out of reach for the majority, I would say. We're in a bit of a tight corner, and it's not surprising when people get very heated when our chief minister talks about we need 100,000 people over here. But we do. Yep. But it's, as I say, it's all those other things about, well, say our public resources are creaking at the seams as it is.
Yeah.
I would like to see, and this is, well, what would I do about it if I ruled the world? I would like to see a much greater focus on what we've already started with, things like the biosphere, and getting away from come to us because we won't charge you taxes or whatever, or we'll make it very cheap for you, and move to those kind of those inherent pull factors. Building the Isle of Man as being a centre that is environmentally healthy. And and I nearly noticed in our press recently about it's part of this building a rainforest effectively.
Yeah, I saw that. That's
which is wonderful. Why I had to read one of the nationals to actually find out about this.
Yeah, I saw it on Facebook on the Manx Wildlife Trust.
Yeah. I think I first saw about it on Guardian Online, I think it was. But amazing. And I'd love to see more of that. So something that is promoting the Isle of Man as being healthy, both environmentally, but healthy as a community as well, and being a positive and healthy place where people would want to raise their children, where we are seeing real investments in population well-being. If we are reducing the levels of absenteeism and promoting ourselves as a jurisdiction that will have a almost inherently healthy and vital workforce, and be a place where you would want to lift and shift your family, where you would want to raise your children because of that wider environment, rather than, well, we'll go and live there because the tax rates are preferential. Actually creating that a much more holistic approach, I suppose, and looking at environmental and personal well-being. I would love to see that, I think.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. So, Jo, what have you got planned next? What's going on for you next in the life lessons, nutrition? You've got a couple of courses coming up, haven't you? You've mentioned.
Yes, a couple of courses coming up. So I'll be very much looking at developing that side of things.
Yeah.
I also have developed an in-person event called Menofest.
Right.
Yes. So that has run about 6 or 7 times now in person, but my next step with that is taking that online, and I'm going to be running that online in June. And that clearly is to extend the reach of that. And that is an event where I have a succession of different speakers. So at the last one, there was myself, of course. There was talking about, okay, ladies, this is what's happening to you, and this is what you need to do from a nutrition perspective. Lifestyle, these are your non-negotiables. So that's where it starts. The next speaker was local hypnotherapist Catherine Toohey. And Catherine then was all about, here are simple tools that you can use day to day to stop yourself reaching for that packet of biscuits. We had local fitness professional, Donna Wally, who got everybody up on their feet. Her practice also involves some choreography. So, of course, that's very good for the cognitive function and the motor skills. Very important. And then local GP, Karen Wilson, going through all HRT and other pharmaceutical solutions, and then closing with Dee Stockman, who talks about sleep and how to get more shut-eye. So the next stage is to take that and those speakers into the online space.
Brilliant.
And that is something that I'm very, very keen to
Okay,
build.
so you're organising that at the moment.
Yes, I am organising that at the moment. So my biggest headache right now is making sure that the tech is going to be robust enough, and how I'm going to make that work with all the different speakers. But that is mid-June 17th.
Fantastic. Date for the diary, and I'll put the resources in the show notes as well, so any our listeners can just go and click on those and.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. So, any books that you've read recently? Not textbooks, I'm guessing. Although a textbook, if it's an easy off the shelf read,
Well, I do have. I was, as you very kindly kind of gave me the heads up, where you might be going with the questions. I was having a think about what might be useful, and in terms of the good read. Okay, that's the easy one first. My favorite book of all time is Jane Eyre.
Right.
So on the classics, but for those who perhaps don't like the classics, there is a book called The Eyre Affair, and that's Eyre, E-Y-R. E-Y-R-E, spelled the same. The Eyre Affair, and that's by a British
E-Y-R-E. Okay.
E-Y-R-E, The Eyre Affair, by Jasper Fforde.
Right.
And that is set in like an alternative universe. It's alternative 1985, where there is a literary detective who is chasing a master criminal through the text of different books and changing what's happening in the future.
Wow.
And the characters in Jane Eyre are part and parcel of that. And it is just almost trippy. It's so incredibly clever. And funny. So
I'll look out for that. That sounds like a decent read.
The classics. This is an absolute hoot of a read.
Brilliant.
But very, very clever at the same time.
Cool.
A book everyone should read is Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely, everybody should read that. One I'm reading at the moment, which is almost convincing me that taking psychedelics is a good idea, is a book called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan.
Right.
And that is about the new science of psychedelics. And that's about research that's being done on MDMA. And now I'm going to have to remind myself how to pronounce this other word. It's the active component in mushrooms, magic mushrooms.
Oh.
And looking at, it looks at the history of things like LSD, etc., and what the science was on that, and then obviously the panic that followed on from the heady days in the 1960s, but how psychedelics are being re-examined and potentially being seen as being very useful for some mental health conditions, including cognitive health issues, so Alzheimer's, etc., etc.
So everyone's going on weed, is that it? We'll be growing it soon.
Yeah, it's less weed and more the stuff that effectively takes you into just that almost alternative headspace.
Oh, okay.
An alternative level of consciousness. And it is fascinating. I say almost makes you think, well, maybe. But I'd still be way too scared. But it's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Really, really interesting. And a book that actually I haven't started yet, but which I know is going to make me furious, utterly furious, and you touched on this in the start, is a book called Ultra Processed People. Why do we all eat stuff that isn't food and why we can't stop? And that's by Chris Valtulkan. Actually, he and his brother are twins, and they do quite a lot of television, and that's about how broken our food system, our food industry is, and how
they changed. Here's irony for you. So the UK, the regulator used to be called the FSA, which was the Financial Services Authority, and now it's the Financial Conduct. No, it's the Financial Conduct Authority, isn't it? FCA now.
Yeah.
So, of course, the FSA still in place is the Food Standards Agency, and I think the last time I checked, there was a member of Tate and Lyle on the board of the Food Standards Agency, which was, I think, a political appointment. But there we are. It just shows you, doesn't it? It's all about money.
It really does. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And these ultra processed foods, which make up the bulk of what we eat as a nation, we're only just behind the US in how bad our diets are. So
you see this time of year all the fields of bright yellow, all the
rapeseed,
high fructose corn syrup. Is it? Well, no, it's not. It's called canola oil, isn't it? Because it's Canada is where it produces most, and it's the reason why it's called canola is because it's from Canada oil. Canola, apparently.
Do you know? I didn't know that.
I read it last night. So
but the number one cause of all diet-related diseases, including obesity and early death, and even the World Health Organization has accepted. It views obesity as being an environmental disease. And we've spent so long shaming people because of their weight and it being treated as why have you got no discipline? And these foods are specifically created to be addictive.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
It is scandalous, absolutely scandalous. And
I will enjoy the read.
I'm going to be furious reading that book.
I look forward to a few blogs when you've read that. Eh?
Yes, indeed.
So who inspires you, Jo?
Honestly, I think this is going to be very sickly, but I think first and foremost, honestly, it is my husband. He genuinely makes me a better person.
Oh,
he genuinely really does. He's definitely the yin to my yang, and is the calming presence that I need. So yes, he absolutely inspires me. But in the main, family and friends, when people suffer losses and they can still be strong and keep functioning and caring, and that just never ceases to amaze me. Friends that have, to a certain extent, okay, pat myself on the back, but who have changed direction and created their own businesses or done a lot for charity, and in their busy lives still find time to say yes to so many different things. And that is just astonishing. And the people that do attract a lot of flack. So the Greta Thunbergs of this world, but that keep on banging the drum, and I just think more power to you.
Yeah, indeed.
More power to you.
Do you have a favourite quote you'd care to share?
One I think is probably quite pertinent, I guess, is one that's actually from Michelle Obama, which is, "Don't let anyone speak for you, and don't rely on others to fight for you." And when any of us are in danger of settling into complacency, then just give yourself a bit of a boot up the arse.
That's wise. Wise words. Yeah.
And I think that is me. I'm a lifelong feminist, so that really resonates. Don't give up your power. Don't ever give up your power.
That's been a real pleasure talking to you today, Jo. It's as always, and more power to your elbow too for what you're doing, and your great little business that you've got going. So where can people go to learn more about you and the things that you're doing? We'll obviously signpost to the website, but what's the other socials that you use?
Yeah, I have a private Facebook group, Life Lessons Nutrition, the Meno group. So I shall provide you with the link for that. And I'm in there throughout the week giving loads and loads of free resources. There are other free resources on the website. So a booklet around, all right, woman in menopause, these are the things that you have to do. From going to your doctor for some blood tests to whatever it is, clearing out, the rubbish that's in your fridge, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm also on Instagram, mainly Facebook. I think that's a factor of my age.
Don't. Well, that's been absolutely a great pleasure to talk to you today. So thank you so much, Jo.
Thank you again for the invitation. Really, it's been a pleasure for me too. Thanks, Sharon.
Island Influencers is a fortnightly podcast. Make sure you don't miss the next episode by clicking the follow button on your podcast platform. A big thanks to the producer and editor of this episode, Catherine Watts and James Spooner at Bear Content. And thank you for listening.